Hey guys. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about DNA. So the topic is components of DNA. This is going to be the first part. There's actually a lot of videos that are going to be coming up on the next couple of days. This is a really big topic. So just a reminder, I always tell you what color you're going to be copying down. This one's going to be yellow. So whatever's on yellow, besides this, okay, don't copy this. Yellow like this, you're going to be copying down in your notes. So let's get started. So first we need to, I'm going to read really quick some of the things you need to know. So number one on the top, it says identify the components of DNA and describe how information for specifying the traits of an organism is carried in DNA. So a lot of blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is you need to know the parts and how that gives an organism, or like let's say a person or an animal or a plant, their physical looks. How come the way they look the way they look? And then the bottom part says recognize the components that make up the genetic code and that are common to all organisms. We're going to talk more about this the next day, which is tomorrow. So let's just not spend any more time on that. So there's the 4 things you need to know by today. Okay, we're going to go one by one. This is orange. Sorry, I know it's confusing. This is orange. Do not copy it down. Number 1, so letter A says, I can tell you that DNA determines traits. So you need to know that. DNA gives you traits. Okay, letter B, or number 2. I can tell you that all organisms have DNA. Again, you know this. All living things have DNA because they're living. C, I can recognize the parts of and structure of DNA. So you need to be able to, like physically, if you look at a picture, you'll be like, oh, that's DNA, and that's this, and that's that. And then last thing, letter D, it says, I can pair the 4 nitrogen bases correctly. A with T and G with C. That last part is the one that students like the most because it's easy, okay? And I'll give you some examples. So the first thing is I can tell you the DNA determines traits. So, well, first of all, what is DNA? Go ahead and copy this down, the yellow. Pause the video, please. Okay, so now that you copy this down, it says, well, DNA is a nucleic acid. Remember biomolecules? It was a long time ago. There was like proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. And we told you to remember that nucleic acids are DNA. Well, here it is again. So DNA is nucleic acid. You know that. DNA is the genetic material inside of the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. You also know that already, right? So a cell has a nucleus, or inside of the nucleus they have DNA. So let's keep going. Now you also need to copy this down. I'm going to give you some time, so pause the video, copy this down. Okay, so it says here, what is the function of DNA? So first thing you need to know, well, DNA stores genetic information that tells the cells which proteins they need to make. And we'll talk more about this later, but for now, I just need you to remember or memorize the first part, which is they store genetic information, right? And you know this, yeah? Your DNA kind of makes you look the way you look, gives you your characteristics, gives you your traits. It has to do with protein. Letter B, or sorry, bottom bullet point, it says responsible for determining all organisms' traits or characteristics. Same thing, so make sure you copy that down, which is characteristics, right? So genetic information that gives you your physical looks, your traits. And for example, here you have a person that's short, a person that's tall. That's because their DNA says that, right? It says to make that person short or to make this person tall. Let's move on. Okay, so just really quick, I mean, you don't have to write this, but just think about 3 different physical traits that you have inherited from your parents, right? So let me give an example. Mine will be black hair, okay? The color of my hair, that will be a physical trait. Number 2, let's say glasses, right? Like my eyes are not the best, obviously, because I need glasses. I got that from my parents, for my DNA, right? Because my parents wear glasses. I'm most likely going to wear glasses too. It's not always true, but that's just a good example, right? So my DNA tells me that my eyes are not the best. What else? The color of my skin, okay? My parents, they're light complected, and their DNA, they passed it on to me, so I came out a little bit light complected. Let's move on to the next thing. Here, pause the video, copy this down, just 2 words. Okay, so you probably heard about this. If not, it's okay. But on this right side here, you have a picture of DNA. This is what DNA looks like. It's just like spiral little twisted thingy. Now, this shape has a name, okay? If you think about it, I know it looks like a twisted ladder, and a lot of students call it that because they learned it that way, right? Twisted ladder. If you have a ladder and you twist it, right, it will look like that. But I don't want you to memorize it that way, okay? We're in high school now. This has a name. This is called a double helix, okay? Okay, so you have the ladder, right, like kind of like this. But if you twist it, it does this like weird shape, okay, like twisted. So this is called a double helix. You need to know that. So now that you copy this down, let's move on. Copy this down, pause the video. Okay, so for this one, this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna, rearrange myself here. So you need to know the structure of DNA. So for this, if you have the ladder that's twisted, right, the twisted ladder, the double helix right here, if you undo it, like if you kind of twist it back so that it's kind of straight, you have something like this on the right. If you zoom in, you have a lot of these little things, right? You have this little P, S, and T, and then P, S, and G, P, S, and T. Now let me go back to the last picture so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, you see this? So you have this little a little ball, and then a bigger little blue ball, and then you have a little green thing attached to it. And then on the other side, you have the same thing. So you see what I'm talking about? Now, each one of those things has a name. So let's go back to this picture here. Now, you need to know that the sides, so in this case, the purple is made up of two things. If you look at this picture here, it's white, purple, white, purple, white, white, green, white, green, white, green, over here, right? That makes up this line that is purple. That is called the sugar and phosphate backbone because it has sugar and phosphates. So there's white circle that has a P on it. That's called a phosphate. That's this word right here. PHOSPHATE, phosphate. And then this little pentagon, right? One side, 5 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This green one is called a sugar. So you have phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar. Therefore, we call it a backbone. Why do we call it a backbone? Well, first of all, you have two. You have one on this side and one on the other side. And it's what makes this be straight, per se, right? That's the backbone, just like your backbone and your back. It keeps you straight. So yeah, now you know what those are. Now let's look at the middle part. So we already talked about the sides. Let's look at the middle. The middle, they're called nitrogenous bases. It's kind of hard to say. You can also just call them nitrogen bases. That's easier, okay? So you have the nitrogen bases, and there's 4 different ones. If you see it in the middle, there's 4 different colors. You have, in this case, yellow, orange, like dark blue, light blue. And then it repeats, yellow, orange, light blue, dark blue. Yellow, orange, blah, blah, blah. So there's only 4 colors. That's going to be important later. So let's move on. Actually, before I move on, let me just remind you, the sides is called sugar phosphate backbone, and the middle is the nitrogen bases. Now, as it says right here, the genetic sequence occurs here. So the important part is the nitrogen bases, because we all have the same sugar phosphate backbone, but we don't all have the same bases. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Copy this down. It's just one word. So what it says here is DNA is a long molecule made up of repeating monomers called nucleotides. So once you put one of each part, you have one phosphate, one sugar, and one base. So one sugar, one phosphate, one base, you get what is called a nucleotide. So if you zoom in here, this little box, it's important because you have one phosphate, one sugar, one base. Okay. Now the next thing, we're going to talk about how they're together, right? So nucleotides are made up of 3 parts that are held together by hydrogen bonds. So these 3 things, right? You have the phosphate, you have the sugar, and then you have the nitrogen base. Those are together, right? Copy those down, actually. That's what I just remember. Copy these down. You only have to put sugar here. You don't have to put pentose. Pause the video because I'm moving on. Okay, so now you know the three parts that they're going to be attached to another one on the other side using a hydrogen bond. And I'll come back to this in a second. Now, before we keep going, you have your notes in front of you. I'm going to ask you a question. Which part of the nucleotide is responsible for the genetic traits? A, phosphate, B, sugar, C, nitrogen base, D, hydrogen bond. Which one is the most important one? I mentioned it earlier. That's not the sides, right? It's not going to be the side, it's going to be the middle. And in the middle, you have the nitrogen base. So that's the answer right there. Let me give you an example here. Now, if you look, this is a slightly different drawing, but you should be able to know it too, because you have a circle, a little pentagon, and then a little box. So you have the phosphate, sugar, base. So in this diagram, what substance is represented by the letter X? So it's asking what's X? Is it ribose sugar, deoxyribose sugar, phosphate, or adenine? The answer is phosphate. C. If you got it right, on the bottom here you have little emojis. Give me a thumbs up if you got it right. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't. It's okay. You can try next time. Okay. Now let's move on to this part right here. Pause the video and copy this down. This is on the second page. Okay. So now that you know that there are the bases, right? In this case, before I talk about this, let's look at here. You have a little circle, the little pentagon, and the base. Circle, pentagon, base. Circle, pentagon, base, right? So this is a nucleotide. This is one nucleotide. This is another nucleotide, another nucleotide, another nucleotide. So this is a phosphate, sugar, and base. Phosphate, sugar, base, phosphate, sugar, base. Phosphate, sugar, and base. Now, you see how they're different colors? Remember how I told you there were 4 different colors? And the colors don't really matter, right? Because they're gonna, every time they draw them or color them or whatever, they're gonna be different colors. Everybody does different colors. What's important is gonna be the name. The names are important. So you're gonna have adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. I know people struggle, students especially struggle to say these names. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. We'll give you a little trick, and it's gonna make your life so much easier. Just remember the first letter of each. That's it. Adenine, that's the one with the A. Thymine is the one with the T. Cytosine is the one with the C. And then guanine is the one with the G. Okay? That's going to be super important for the rest of the next 2 weeks. Okay? Now, you don't have to copy this, but you do have to listen. This is the most important part. Now, there are rules about how they pair with each other. So adenine always pairs with thymine. When you're talking about DNA, adenine pairs with thymine. When you're talking about DNA, G pairs with C, which is guanine pairs with cytosine. So I'm reading it right here. A with T, G with C. Or you can say T with A and C with G. You can flip them around. It doesn't matter. A with T, C with G. So a little trick that we have, it's apples in the trees, cars in the garage. Okay? So if you remember that, you're gonna remember this. Apples in the trees, cars in the garage. Because think about it. Are you gonna be putting a tree inside of the garage? No, right? So T and G cannot go together. Right? T is for timing, T and guanine for garage, they can't go together. Okay, are you gonna leave your apples in the car? So when you want an apple, you're gonna have to go all the way to the car? No, it makes no sense, right? So what about, are you gonna take your car into a tree? I mean, you shouldn't, right? C for cytosine and A for apple, A for adenine. For T. Tree and car, they don't go together. So if you remember it like this, you're gonna be in good shape. Apples in the tree, cars in the garage. Now, this is not what it means, right? They mean adenine and thymine, guanine and cytosine. But this is gonna help you remember the pairs. And there's gonna be a picture here. This is actually your supplemental A. This is the picture you're gonna get on the star. Okay? So if you look over here on the right side, you have the phosphate, the sugar, phosphate, sugar, all that stuff. That's not really important. That's just the backbone. The important part is the middle one. if you notice, A goes with T, and then C goes with G. T, A, T, C, G. I know I can flip them around, right? I can say A goes with T is the same as T goes with A. T and TA is the same thing. G and C and CG is the same thing. So apple trees, car, garage. Remember that. So let's actually practice. Now I want you to pause this and do it on your paper really quick. This is not hard. Remember, apple, tree, car, garage. Pause the video and then do it yourself. Okay, so now that you did it, hopefully, I'm gonna go over it really quick. So C goes with car, apple, tree, or garage. Oh, car, garage. Okay, so it's a G. Okay, so that's all you have to do. So what goes with A? T. What goes with G? C. What goes with T? A. What goes with C? G. And then you're done. This is simple, right? Now remember that the letters don't mean apple, tree, car, garage, but they help you remember. Okay, this means cytosine goes with guanine, thymine goes with adenine, so on. If you got this right, give me a thumbs up on the bottom, the little emoji. Let's go to the last thing here. We're almost done. I know you want to be done. Oh, I messed up. I put an error here. My bad. It says here, these bases are held together by hydrogen bonds. So one more thing you need to know, if I give you a full picture, like on the right, it says hydrogen, Hydrogen, hydrogen bonds. So in the middle, they're connected, okay, literally they're connected by a hydrogen bond. That's what this little connection in the middle is called. If you look, the little dotted line, that's what it's do, the A and the T and the T and the A and, you know, the CG, all those bases, because that's the name of the bases. Oh, sorry, that's the name of the thing in the middle, bases. All the bases are connected with each other with a hydrogen bond. So for today, that's all you have to know. We're going to be adding a little bit more later, but thanks for watching, guys.